My name is Eleanor Vance, but most people call me Ellie. I'm 32 years old, and for most of my life, I felt like I was living in someone else's shadow. It was a sweltering August evening in Austin, Texas, the kind where the heat lingers long after the sun goes down. My family was holding their annual summer party at a fancy steakhouse downtown, the kind with valet parking and tablecloths so white they hurt your eyes. This year, they'd pulled out all the stops, inviting my brother's entire department, including his boss. It was the perfect stage for him to shine. I walked in, my heart pounding with a familiar, foolish hope for connection, but my mother stopped me before I even reached the main dining room. Her voice was ice. "We didn't invite you for a reason, Eleanor." My brother's voice was right behind hers, sharp and cruel. "What are you doing here? For God's sake, don't tell anyone you're related to me." My chest felt like it was in a vise, but I held my tongue. I watched as he moved through the room, accepting back pats and praise, taking all the credit for a massive new project his company had just launched. I knew the truth. His contribution had been minimal, a mess my team had to clean up. Then came the moment that changed everything. His boss, Mr. Harrison, a man with a booming voice and an impeccable suit, stepped up to the microphone. Before we continue, he announced, "I want to offer a special thanks to the real genius who saved this entire project. Let's have a huge round of applause for Ms. Eleanor Vance, the founder and CEO of Vance Innovations." The room exploded with applause. My family froze. My brother's jaw practically hit the floor. My parents' eyes darted around the room, desperate for somewhere to look other than at me. I stood, smiled politely, and said nothing about them. That night, I left the restaurant without a word. A strange sense of peace washed over me. The truth was out, laid bare for everyone to see. I knew, with a certainty that chilled me, that if I said one more word, the perfect image my family had built around my brother would shatter into a million pieces. In that moment, the power dynamic in my family didn't just shift. It fractured forever. A week later, my phone started blowing up with texts. One from my brother read, "Don't do this, Ellie, please." Suddenly, they needed me. But I was no longer the Ellie they knew how to dismiss. I had found my voice. Before I get deeper into what happened next, I'd love to know what time it is where you are, and what city you're watching from. It's amazing to think about how far these stories can travel. And if you've ever had to navigate a difficult family situation, I hope you'll share a piece of your story in the comments. Your strength might be exactly what someone else needs to hear today. And if you enjoy stories like this, please hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. Don't forget the notification bell so you won't miss what's coming next. Growing up in our suburban Austin home, I was always the quiet one, lost in my older brother Caleb's long shadow. Caleb had a natural magnetism. He could walk into any room and own it within minutes. My parents, Sharon and David, were his biggest fans. "Caleb is destined for great things," my mother would say, her eyes shining with a pride she never seemed to have for me. At the dinner table, my father would hang on his every word about football practice or his social life, adding, "That's my boy. He's got the charisma to go anywhere." Meanwhile, I was the one who quietly fixed the home Wi-Fi when it went out, who set up their new smartphones, and who patiently explained what a cloud backup was for the 10th time. To them, my skills weren't a sign of ambition. I was just good with computers. As if I spent my days plugging and unplugging cables. When I was a teenager, I tried to tell them about my dreams of coding and building a tech company. My mother would offer a distracted, "That's nice, dear," before immediately turning the conversation back to her golden child. "Caleb, tell your father about the award you won in debate." So, I stopped trying. I poured all that ignored energy into my work, founding my fintech startup, Vance Innovations, right out of my cramped apartment. Long nights fueled by cheap coffee and a burning desire to prove myself, not to them, but to me, turned into a company that major financial institutions now depend on. I was proud, but my family knew nothing about it. They wouldn't have understood, and frankly, they wouldn't have cared. What hurt more than the dismissal was the money. For years, I was their silent benefactor. I'd cover their mortgage payment when they were short, pay for Caleb's car insurance when he forgot, and wire thousands of dollars for emergencies, big and small. There was never a thank you, just an assumption that I would always be there to catch them. Once, I sent $800 to cover an unexpected medical bill for my dad. My mom's only response via text was, "Thank goodness. Caleb has been so stressed at work, we didn't want to bother him." I stared at my phone, a lump forming in my throat. I wasn't just an afterthought, I was a financial utility. Another time, Caleb called in a panic. He needed $2,000 for a security deposit on a new luxury apartment he couldn't afford. I sent it, hoping he might finally ask me what I did for a living, how I could afford to help him. He just said, "You're a lifesaver, ill," and hung up. I kept Vance Innovations a secret, not because I was ashamed, but because I knew they would either trivialize it or worse, find a way to make it about Caleb. My company grew. We landed partnerships with national banks. I hired a team of brilliant engineers and moved into a sleek corner office with a view of the Austin skyline. I was a CEO, but to my family, I was still just Ellie, the quiet girl who fixed their printers. My mother once boasted to a neighbor, "Caleb's company is revolutionizing online finance in the South." I just smiled and nodded, knowing full well his company was one of our biggest clients. His bosses emailed me when there was a problem, not him. But I never corrected her. It seemed pointless. They had already chosen who was worthy of their pride. The family group chat was the worst. My mom would post photos of Caleb at a work happy hour with captions like, "So proud of our superstar closing another big deal." I'd scroll past, my thumb hovering over the reply button, wanting to post a link to the Forbes article that had just featured Vance Innovations. But I never did. They'd probably accuse me of trying to steal his thunder. So I stayed silent, building my empire while they celebrated Caleb's imaginary kingdom. Looking back, I see how their neglect forged me. Every ignored achievement, every dismissive comment, was another log on the fire that drove me. I didn't need their applause. I had my results, my team, my success. But that night at the restaurant, when my own mother told me I didn't belong, something inside me finally snapped. I wasn't just the quiet one anymore. And I was ready for them to see exactly who I had become. The restaurant was buzzing with the low hum of conversation and the clink of expensive silverware. I straightened the shoulders of my silk blouse, determined to hold my head high, but my mother's words echoed in my ears. "We didn't invite you for a reason." As I walked past them, Caleb leaned in, his smile a tight, angry line. "Seriously, Ellie, don't embarrass me. Just find a corner and stay there." His words were a familiar sting, but tonight they felt different, less like a cut and more like a final confirmation of a truth I'd avoided for too long. I wasn't here to fight. I was here to witness. I found an empty seat at a table near the back, a perfect vantage point to watch the performance. My parents, Sharon and David, were in their element, weaving through the crowd, their laughter a little too loud, their hands always touching Caleb's arm or shoulder. He was the star, shaking hands with his colleagues, charming their wives, acting every bit the corporate hotshot they believed him to be. For a few minutes, I just sat there, nursing a glass of sparkling water, an invisible ghost at my own family's party. Then, my friend Maya slid into the chair beside me. "Hey you," she said, her warm smile a welcome relief. "Heard Vance Innovations just landed the Meridian Bank contract." "That's huge!" "Any plans to celebrate?" I felt a genuine smile spread across my face, the first one of the night. "We're taking the whole team out next week," I replied, keeping my voice low. "Maybe a new office in Dallas next year." We chatted for a bit about her work in marketing, a comfortable and easy conversation that felt like an anchor in a stormy sea. Maya knew the basics of my family situation, and she was smart enough not to push. Caleb's voice boomed from a nearby table. "The key to the Secure Pay project," he announced to his rapt audience, "was my idea for a streamlined user interface. I told the dev team, think simple, think elegant." He gestured with his hands as if he were an artist describing a masterpiece. My father clapped him on the back, beaming with pride. "That's my boy!" Always thinking ahead. I had to bite the inside of my cheek to keep from scoffing. The truth was, Caleb's initial idea had been a clunky, insecure mess. My lead engineer had spent a week of sleepless nights completely rebuilding it from the ground up. But I didn't say a word. Correcting him in front of everyone would just make me look petty. They wouldn't believe me anyway. I watched my mother nod enthusiastically as Caleb spun another tale about his pivotal role in negotiating with vendors. Her hand rested on his arm, her expression one of pure adoration. It was the same look she'd had at every one of his football games, every awards ceremony, every moment he was in the spotlight. A cousin I hadn't seen in years stopped by my table. "Ellie, how are you?" she asked politely. "Fine, thanks," I said, my voice even. "Just busy with work." I wasn't about to hang our family's dirty laundry out for everyone to see. Caleb was on a roll now. "We're projected to close another major account by the end of the quarter," he declared, his voice full of swagger. "I've been burning the midnight oil to get it done." My mother turned to one of his colleagues. "He's always been such a hard worker, ever since he was a little boy." I clenched my cocktail napkin under the table until my knuckles were white. Hard worker. He had missed 3 critical deadlines on the Secure Pay project, forcing my team to work through a holiday weekend to fix his mistakes. I had the emails from his boss, Mr. Harrison, practically begging me to intervene. But here he was, soaking up the glory, while I sat in the corner like a misbehaving child. Maya gently nudged my arm, her eyes soft with concern. "You okay?" she whispered. I forced another smile. "Yeah, just enjoying the show." We turned our conversation to her new puppy, a safe, pleasant topic that kept me from letting the anger boil over. I had learned a long time ago that expecting them to see me, to value me, was a fool's errand. They had their star, and I was just part of the distant, dark sky. But as dessert was being served, something shifted. The restaurant quieted as Mr. Harrison, Caleb's boss, walked to the small podium at the front of the room. He tapped the microphone, and his deep, commanding voice filled the space. "Good evening, everyone. I want to take a moment to acknowledge the person who was truly instrumental in the success of our Secure Pay platform," he began, his eyes scanning the crowd. My heart began to pound against my ribs. He couldn't possibly. Then his gaze landed directly on me, a person whose brilliance and dedication turned a potential disaster into our company's biggest win this year. Please join me in thanking Ms. Eleanor Vance, the founder and CEO of Vance Innovations. The name hung in the air for a moment before the room erupted in applause. A wave of shock silenced my family's table. My mother's dessert fork clattered onto her plate. My father's proud smile froze and then collapsed. Caleb's face went completely pale, his hand gripping his water glass so tightly I thought it might shatter. Mr. Harrison wasn't finished. Vance Innovations didn't just consult on this project. They rebuilt our entire payment gateway from scratch. Without Eleanor's proprietary algorithms and her team's incredible work ethic, we would have lost our largest client and millions in revenue. I caught my mother's eye across the room. Her expression was a painful mix of disbelief and horror. My father was now staring intently at his plate, unable to look at me. They hadn't known. In all their obsession with Caleb's career, they had never once thought to ask what the name of my little computer business was. "Eleanor," Mr. Harrison called out, gesturing for me to come forward. "Would you be willing to say a few words?" My legs felt surprisingly steady as I stood and walked to the podium. I could feel Caleb's furious gaze burning into my back. I took a slow, deliberate breath and faced the crowd. "Thank you, Mr. Harrison," I said, my voice calm and clear. "I'm honored to be here. At Vance Innovations, our guiding principle is simple: we believe in building things that work. It's not about big talk, it's about execution, persistence, and integrity." I kept it brief and professional, never once looking at my family. The applause was even louder this time, but their stunned silence was all I could hear. As I stepped away from the podium, Mr. Harrison intercepted me. "Eleanor, a word," he said, his tone all business. "We're finalizing a new round of investment in our partnership with Vance Innovations. But the board is insisting on a full departmental review to ensure we're streamlining our operations." He looked me straight in the eye, and I knew this was my moment. "I'll endorse the deal," I said, my voice firm, "on one condition. Your company has to commit to cutting all underperforming staff. No exceptions." Mr. Harrison's eyebrow shot up, a flicker of understanding in his eyes. He knew exactly who I was talking about. "Agreed," he said with a decisive nod. "We'll start the performance reviews on Monday, beginning with the sales department." I glanced over at Caleb. He was still sitting at the table, frozen, looking like he'd just seen a ghost. He had heard every word. The color drained from my mother's face as she frantically whispered something to my father. For the first time all night, they looked small. powerless. The rest of the evening was a blur. Distant relatives and Caleb's colleagues flocked to my side, shaking my hand, their voices full of a newfound respect. "I had no idea you ran your own company," an uncle exclaimed. I thanked them graciously, keeping my answers short. My family remained huddled at their table, their bubble of pride popped, leaving them exposed and confused. I didn't need to gloat. I didn't need to say, "I told you so." The truth, delivered so publicly, was more than enough. I had spent a lifetime feeling invisible to them. But now they finally saw me. Not as the quiet daughter or the family ATM, but as the woman who had built an empire right under their noses. As I left the restaurant that night, I felt a quiet, unshakable strength settle deep in my bones. Their shock, their fear, their frantic whispers. None of it could touch me anymore. I was finally free. 3 days after the party, my phone began to buzz incessantly. I was at my desk, deep in a conference call finalizing a new client acquisition for Vance Innovations, when a text from my mother, Sharon, lit up the screen. I ignored it, but another one followed, and then another. When I finally had a moment, I opened them. "Eleanor, we are so terribly sorry about the party," the first one read. "We had no idea about the scale of your success." The second one came just a minute later. "Speaking of which, Caleb is in a bit of a tight spot. Can you help him with his rent? We're a little short this month." I stared at the messages, a cold, heavy feeling settling in my stomach. Not, "We're so proud." Not, "Can we talk?" Just a hollow apology followed by the same old request. After years of being treated like a ghost, the first thing they do when they see my success is ask me to use it to bail out my brother. I set my phone down, my hand trembling slightly, and didn't reply. The next morning, a voicemail from my father, David. His voice was low, measured, an attempt at sounding sincere. "Ellie, your mother and I were truly proud of what you've accomplished," he said. The words I had longed to hear for years now felt like ash in my mouth. "But your brother is in a real bind at work. He thinks they're sidelining him. You're doing so well, surely you can cover his car payment, just this once." I listened to the message, my jaw clenching. Proud, they were proud of my wallet, not of me. They had never once asked about the sacrifices, the risks, the 18-hour days it took to build my company. I deleted the voicemail without a second thought. That afternoon, the final piece of the trifecta landed in my inbox. An email from Caleb. The subject line was just my name. "You made me look like a complete fool in front of my boss and my entire team," he wrote, his words dripping with venom. "You could have given me a heads up that you were the mysterious CEO everyone was talking about. Now I'm in hot water at work, and you're just sitting on top of your little empire. You owe me, Ellie. You need to fix this, or I swear, it's going to get a lot worse." I read it twice. Not a hint of remorse. No apology for years of taking my money and my kindness for granted. He honestly believed my success was something he was entitled to, something I should have shared with him to protect his fragile ego. I closed the email, my heart pounding not with fear, but with a sudden, liberating clarity. He didn't deserve a response. He deserved silence. I opened my online banking app and scrolled through years of transaction history. $200 for my parents' property taxes last spring. $500 for an emergency plumber. The recurring $800 a month transfer to cover Caleb's downtown apartment lease. Thousands upon thousands of dollars, each one sent with a quiet, desperate hope that this time, they would finally see me, that this time, they would say thank you. They never did. My finger hovered over the recurring payments I had set up for them. Electricity, gas, Caleb's car insurance. One by one, I canceled them all. A confirmation message popped up on the screen, and I felt a profound weight lift from my shoulders. The Bank of Ellie was officially closed. I wasn't their daughter or their sister in any meaningful way. I was their emergency fund, their safety net. And I was done. I put my phone on silent, the screen going dark. My office buzzed with the quiet energy of productivity. My team was finalizing a new algorithm, and a proposal for a major European bank sat on my desk, waiting for my final approval. This was my world. I had built it with my own 2 hands. I didn't need their toxic, conditional love to keep it turning. Each unanswered message, each canceled payment, was a brick in the wall I was building around myself, a boundary they would never cross again. A week later, just as I was wrapping up for the day, an automated email from our HR software landed in my inbox. The subject, Update on investment partner review. It was a summary report confirming that Mr. Harrison's company had completed the mandatory staff evaluation, the one that had been my condition for the new investment. The report was concise and professional. It stated that several employees in the sales department had been identified as redundant or consistently underperforming. Caleb Vance was at the top of the list, cited for missed deadlines, falsified client reports, and an over-reliance on third-party support. My team. A footnote indicated that his employment had been terminated, effective immediately. There it was in cold, corporate black and white. My condition had been met. Caleb was out of a job. I leaned back in my chair, staring at the screen. I had pushed for corporate efficiency, not personal revenge, but I knew my family would never see the difference. That evening, my doorbell rang, a sharp, insistent chime that cut through the quiet of my home. I opened it to find Caleb on my porch. He looked terrible. His face was pale and puffy, his eyes bloodshot. "Ellie, you have to fix this," he pleaded, his voice cracking. "I lost my job. It was because of you. You're the CEO, you have the power. Call Harrison. Tell him it was a mistake. Get me my job back." I stood there, my hand gripping the doorknob, speechless for a moment. He lunged forward, his desperation making him reckless. "I can't pay my rent. My car is going to get repossessed. My life is falling apart because of you. You owe me this?" His entitled rage was so familiar, but this time, it didn't intimidate me. Just as I was about to respond, a car pulled into my driveway. It was Maya, stopping by with takeout for our weekly dinner. She got out of the car, took one look at the scene on my porch, and her easy smile vanished. "Is everything okay here?" she asked, her gaze flicking from my face to Caleb's. Caleb saw her as a potential ally. "She's trying to ruin me," he yelled, pointing a trembling finger at me. "She got me fired, Maya. After everything I've done for her. Tell her she has to help me." Maya didn't even flinch. She walked calmly up the steps and stood beside me, crossing her arms. "Caleb, Ellie doesn't owe you a thing," she said, her voice firm as steel. "It sounds like you're asking her to clean up your own mess." Her simple, powerful statement grounded me. I took a deep breath and looked my brother dead in the eye. "I didn't get you fired, Caleb," I said, my voice steady and cold. "Your performance did. I built my company from the ground up with hard work. I don't reward incompetence, and I will not use my influence to save you from the consequences of your own actions." His jaw dropped, his mouth opening and closing as he searched for a response. I held up a hand to stop him. "This isn't revenge. This is accountability. You've been leaning on me, on Mom and Dad, your entire life. It's time for you to stand on your own 2 feet. His anger deflated, replaced by a raw, pathetic desperation. "So you're just going to let me fail," he whispered. "I'm not letting you do anything," I said. "You're not failing. You're starting over. It's time you figured it out for yourself." Maya put a supportive hand on my back. I could feel her strength flowing into me, reinforcing my resolve. Caleb stared at us for a long moment, his face a storm of confusion and fury. Finally, he turned away, muttering curses under his breath, and stalked back to his car. The engine roared to life, and he peeled out of my driveway, leaving nothing but the smell of burning rubber and a profound silence in his wake. As I closed the door, I finally felt free of his shadow. On a gray, drizzly Sunday morning a couple of weeks later, my doorbell rang again. I peered through the peephole and my heart sank. It was my parents, Sharon and David, standing huddled together under a single small umbrella. They looked older, worn down by a stress I hadn't seen on them before. My mother's eyes were puffy and red. My father stared at my welcome mat, unable to meet my gaze. "Can we come in, Eleanor?" my mother asked, her voice barely a whisper when I opened the door. I hesitated, a war raging within me. Every instinct screamed to shut the door, to protect the peace I had fought so hard to win. But another part of me, a ghost of the daughter I used to be, knew I had to see this through to the end. I stepped aside and let them into my living room. The air immediately felt thick and heavy, charged with a history of unspoken resentment. We sat in tense silence, the coffee table between us feeling like a canyon. My mother finally broke it, her words sounding rehearsed. "We wanted to say we're sorry," she began, twisting a tissue in her hands. "For how we treated you at the party, and for everything. We didn't understand what you were accomplishing." My father nodded, chiming in on cue. "But Caleb is really struggling now, Ellie. He's lost everything. He needs a job, a chance to get back on his feet. You're so well connected. Couldn't you make a call for him? I leaned back against the sofa, my fingers tracing the rim of a cold coffee mug. Their apology was a bridge, built only to get them to what they really wanted on the other side. You're sorry now? I asked, my voice dangerously calm. For years, you treated me like I was invisible. You praised Caleb's every breath, even when he was failing. I paid your bills when your accounts were overdrawn. I paid his rent when he was living beyond his means. I paid to fix your broken water heater last winter. Thousands and thousands of dollars. And not once did you say thank you. Not once did you ask how I was doing. And now, you only show up at my door because he needs something from me again. My mother's face flushed with shame. We didn't realize you were doing all of that, she stammered, her voice cracking. We just thought you were helping out. Helping out. I shot back, my voice rising with years of pent-up frustration. I was keeping you afloat. While you were bragging about Caleb's imaginary successes, I was the one making sure your lights stayed on. My father finally looked at me, his eyes pleading. We made mistakes, Eleanor. We know that. But he's your brother. Family is supposed to help family. You're successful now. You can afford to give him a second chance. His words were the final straw. That twisted appeal to a family I was never truly a part of. I stood up and walked to the window, watching the rain streak down the glass. I gave you chances. I said, my back still to them, hundreds of them. Every time I transferred money, every time I sat in silence at dinner while you ignored me, every time I swallowed my pride. At that party, you told me I wasn't invited. You told me not to admit I was related to you. I built Vance Innovations from nothing, with no help from any of you, and you didn't give a damn until it impacted your golden boy. I am done being your emergency plan. The tears were now streaming down my mother's face. Please, Ellie, she sobbed. We're just trying to make things right. For Brendan's sake, just make one phone call. I turned around, my resolve like granite. No, I said, the single word hanging in the air with absolute finality. I will not let you use me to enable him anymore. Caleb made his choices. Now he has to live with them. I have carried this family on my back for the last time. My father's expression hardened, his desperation turning to anger. You're turning your back on your own family, he said, his voice low and threatening. My family, I repeated, a bitter laugh escaping my lips. A family celebrates each other's successes. A family doesn't use one child to fund the other's failures. I'm not turning my back on you. I'm setting a boundary you should have respected years ago. You don't get to demand my help after you've made it perfectly clear you never valued my love. The room fell into a heavy, defeated silence. They knew I was right. My mom slowly got to her feet, wiping her eyes, her shoulders slumped in defeat. My dad stared at the floor, his jaw tight with resentment. As they walked to the door, my mother paused, her voice a broken whisper. We never meant to hurt you. I didn't answer. I just held the door open as they stepped back out into the rain. My father gave me one last look, his face a mask of disappointment. You're making this much harder than it needs to be, Eleanor. I didn't flinch. No, I said quietly. You already did. I closed the door, leaning my forehead against the cool wood. My chest ached, but my mind was crystal clear. They hadn't come to apologize. They had come to collect. And for the first time, they left empty-handed. The weeks that followed were filled with a profound and healing silence. I'd blocked their numbers, and the absence of their drama was like a breath of fresh air. Advance Innovations, we were flying. We landed the European banking contract. My team launched a groundbreaking new security feature, and our valuation soared. I poured my energy into my work, into my team, into my life. I heard through the grapevine that Caleb was waiting tables, struggling to make ends meet. My parents had to sell their car, and were considering downsizing their home. A part of me felt a flicker of sadness for them, but it was overshadowed by a powerful sense of relief. Their problems were no longer my burden to carry. To celebrate my company's success and my newfound freedom, I took a solo trip to San Francisco. I walked across the Golden Gate Bridge, the salty wind whipping through my hair, and felt a sense of boundless possibility. I spent my days exploring the city, sketching new ideas in notebooks at quiet cafes, and feeling completely, unapologetically myself. I didn't need their approval to be happy. I didn't need their recognition to be successful. Looking out at the glittering city skyline from my hotel room, I finally understood the lesson that had taken me 32 years to learn. My family's love had been conditional, tied not to who I was, but to what I could provide. For years, I had been pouring water into a bucket full of holes, hoping that one day it would be full. Cutting them off wasn't an act of cruelty, it was an act of self-preservation. My worth isn't determined by my family's validation. It's forged in my resilience, defined by the empire I built, and protected by the boundaries I finally had the courage to set. Walking away from a toxic relationship, even when it's with your family, is one of the hardest things you can do. But it's also the thing that can set you free. I boarded my flight back to Austin, not with a heavy heart, but with a light one. I was the author of my own story now, and I was ready to write the next chapter. On my own terms. The end. Thank you so much for joining me on this journey. It's a reminder that sometimes the most important person to stand up for is yourself. What did you think of the choice I made? Please share your thoughts, and perhaps a story of your own in the comments below. Your experiences matter, and they can inspire others. If this story resonated with you, please give it a thumbs up. Share it with someone who might need to hear it, and be sure to subscribe to the channel for more stories about navigating life's toughest challenges. And don't forget to hit that notification bell so you never miss a new video.